All right, and welcome to another episode of Hempire. I am Peter Bahrenburg, along as always with my buddy, founder and CEO of PureWell, Nick. How you doing, buddy?
Well, I'm trying to stay dry right now, Pete. I mean, as everybody knows, we're dealing with a little bit of a hurricane right now.
A little wet down here, a little wet.
It's a little wet. It's a little wet. So obviously, we hope that all the families are safe and everybody we know and safe and secure, and get their electricity back and
Absolutely.
Everything that they need. To thank God, hopefully no one got hurt or anything like that or damage. So our hearts are and thoughts and prayers are out for the people that are dealing with the hurricane right now.
So pretty much in North Florida, not down here in sunny South Florida. We kind of skirted it once again.
We did. We kind of basically, if anyone knows, where our headquarters is in Delray Beach, Boynton Beach area, that type of. So it's South Florida on the east side, and basically this went up the coast on the west coast, and then kind of cut through the state through Orlando. So it missed us. So we're lucky, right?
That we are. And, well, I guess we should get right to our guest here. We're talking about someone who's actually got one of his songs on an iconic movie for an iconic director. And we're talking about The Wolf of Wall Street and Martin Scorsese. And the song is Meth Lab Zozo Sticker by 7Horse. We're talking with the drummer, Phil Leavitt. Phil, how you doing, sir?
I'm well, Pete. How are you? Hey, Nick. I'm doing well out here in sunny California. No hurricanes, of course. And today the earth is not shaking, so we're happy. But I'm feeling for you guys in Florida. I've been staying tuned to the coverage, and I've got some friends there. So just hope you guys. I'm happy to hear you guys got spared this time.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Phil. And it's funny because talking about this very iconic song. This song is still holds strong even in 2022. The song just got used in Kevin James's Netflix football comedy Home Team, which was pretty cool. What do you think about the song? Is it that makes it so iconic or and works so well in a movie?
Yeah, it's really funny because when that thing happened last year with Kevin James and the Home Team. I mean, that's a kids movie. That's a
Still funny.
G-rated piece of content.
Right,
It's very funny.
right.
But I mean, if you think about the difference between The Wolf of Wall Street, what was going on in that film, and how Scorsese used this track, and what's going on in Kevin James. I mean, but we've been told that anything basically in slow motion, this song works. If you see people walking in slow motion, and I think it starts, if I may be so humble as to talk about this, it's that opening drum groove. I mean, when you have boom,
For sure.
cha,
Oh yeah.
boom, it just puts you immediately in this mood of like, oh, this has swagger. And that's really what this thing is all about, is the swagger. I think we probably worked against ourselves a little bit with the title Meth Lab Zoso Sticker. That may have a tendency to put some people off, but that was my partner's, the funny backstory on this song is, we go back, my partner and I, Joey Callio, go back a long way from another band called Dada in the 90s. And we started this project, 7Horse, in 2010. The first track we ever cut was this song, Meth Lab Zoso Sticker. And how it started was he sent me the opening guitar riff, which is, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, this country blues kind of goofy hillbilly riff. He sent that to me, and it had a title on it that said Meth Lab Zoso Sticker. And for him, that was just a way to document this riff in his phone. He didn't really mean that as a title. He was watching Breaking Bad. He loves Led Zeppelin.
How funny.
He saw the connection between Led Zeppelin and Breaking Bad, and he just labeled it Meth Lab Zoso Sticker. I get this thing on my phone. I see that, and I go, well, that's a pretty cool title. I've never seen that before. I'm going to write the whole lyric around this title. And he was kind of like, are you sure you want to go there with that? I was like, yeah, I think this is going to be good. And, little did we know that this thing would end up in The Wolf of Wall Street with the incredible, iconic director, Martin Scorsese, which is an incredible honor to have it in his movie. And then just last year in this G-rated, family-friendly Kevin James thing on Netflix, we were kind of blown away that how could this song exist in both of these worlds simultaneously? But yet it does. And that's not the only place it's been used. That song's been used a few different times in a few different projects. And it always seems to work when people are looking for that swagger and that feeling of like, this is a badass moment in this piece. So, we're pretty pleased with that.
Listen. I definitely feel like that. I mean, I think everybody does when they hear it. So I can't. I think you nailed it just exactly the way it is. It's funny because Kevin James, I don't know if he still does, but he had bought a house. Maybe 5 minutes from
Right
us,
around the
right
corner.
on the right on the corner, right on the water down the street. I don't know if he still has it, so it's kind of funny, but
If he's
it's
walking the
still
street, we'll hear that song playing, so we'll know.
yeah,
Right.
right. Exactly, exactly. Well, or maybe his Segway from Mall Cops that he and he has it
Right.
playing on his Segway. So is it true that you got the name of your band from your grandfather because he was a bettor?
Yeah, my
Is
grandfather,
that
my
true?
grand yeah, that's kind of the story. My grandfather, my family's from Chicago. My grandfather in the 30s and 40s was into he worked in illegal gambling in Chicago. He also worked for Capone as a collector. That was
Oh
the
wow.
beginning of his career. But he was involved in casinos from a very young age and eventually came to Las Vegas, which is where I was born. But he loved to play the horses. I mean, he was an everyday kind of horse better. And certainly in Las Vegas in the sports book, he would hit the sports book before going on his shift at the old Stardust Hotel, and he would lay a $20 bet to win. That was his bet. He always bet to win, and he always bet 20. And the 7 Horse was one of his, favorite bets. He had a couple of other bets, always bet a gray horse on turf and certain jockeys. I mean, he was deep into it. But 20 on the 7 Horse to win was one of his bets. And so when we were trying to come up with a name for a band, which is one of the toughest things you ever want to do, is try to find a name for your band. We just thought 7 Horse, and we put it together, the seven and the horse, and it's kind of a tribute to my grandfather, and it just sort of worked, being from Las Vegas and the kind of subject matter we were dealing with, this kind of like barroom, kind of vibe that we have, particularly at the beginning. It just seemed to fit for us.
Yeah, no, it's a great name. That's why I thought it was kind of cool that you. I mean, look, my grandfather's important to me. I know, I'm sure for Pete, love the ties at Capone. I mean, we're
Yeah,
both Italian, so
right.
that's always a good thing. So, but the point is that it's just nice that you always hear the story
And
of
here's a
where it
nice
comes
Yeah, and
from.
time.
it's cool.
We were
I
actually
get to think
guests.
about you get to think about him every time the band name comes up. He pops into my head, and that's just a great way to always remember him.
Yeah, for sure. What'd you say, Pete?
No, I was saying a nice little tie into Capone is that my grandparents were guests of Capone's over at I think the Green Doors, his place in Chicago, right? Or the Green,
Right.
yeah, they went there as guests of his because my family, in the city they were known here and there a little bit.
There you go. Oh, there you go. There you go. The what's your other name, Pete? What's the family name? No.
That's no
So
names. Sorry about that.
well, in 2014, you released an album titled "Songs for a Voodoo Wedding," and one of the songs in the album was called "A Friend in Weed."
Yeah,
Obviously, we love
friended
that
weed.
here in Hempire.
Yeah.
So
Well,
obviously,
you know,
big
it's
fan
not
of.
the weed you're thinking of. Of course, this was a
Oh,
song. This was a song we wrote. We were going to a music festival in Weed, California. All right, there's a little
okay.
town near the border of California and Oregon called Weed. And it's named after a lumber magnate named Abner Weed. And
Oh, wow.
so the town's named after him. But of course, in Weed, they make the most out of it. If you roll into the gas station in Weed, every refrigerator magnet, bumper sticker, they all have a green leaf on them. I mean, you got to make money somehow in Weed. So
Right, of course.
we came to Weed to play this music festival, and the people there were so kind to us, and we were really friendly. And we had a great time there that we decided to write this tune called "A Friend in Weed." But of course, there's a double entendre there, and the song does have a lot of marijuana references in it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You must be a big fan of cannabis. I mean, this is.
I am an enthusiast. Yes, I am an enthusiast, and it goes back, generations. Really, my little did I know, growing up in Las Vegas in the '70s, that both my father and my mother were enthusiasts back in the days when it was highly illegal. And I remember, my dad used to work graveyard, which is like 8 p.m. till I don't know 4 in the morning. or maybe midnight to 8. He was a blackjack dealer at the Stardust, at the Mint, and eventually at Caesar's Palace. And I would see him getting ready for work. And I remember one day he was getting dressed, and I was like, "What is that? What is that smell?" I was probably like 9 or 10, and he goes, "Oh, Turkish cigarettes." But we had a hookah in the
Okay.
house. Yeah,
Never heard that one. Turkish
yeah,
cigarettes.
right.
That's a good one,
So
though.
my dad was a lifelong pot smoker. My mom too. She's still around. My dad's no longer with us, but my mom is still alive and in her 70s, and is still an enthusiast. And my dad and I, we imbibed together. I used to take him to the pharmacy here in Los Angeles to pick up his supplies. I mean, it was something that we actually bonded over as father and son, if you can believe it.
So now, how old, or when were you introduced? I guess, I mean, I don't know, obviously it's in your family, but when did you
Yeah.
partake, or when was the
It's
first
really
time?
it's interesting because when all through the high school years when most people are really getting into it, because I think it was in my house so much, and my dad did have a lot of issues in his life because of other drugs. I think harder drugs. He was
Okay.
unable to stay away from. He was a kind of a guy who was an excessive sort of personality. Whatever you had, you have to have more of it. There is no limit. That just go as far as you possibly can, and he did. And in Las Vegas in those days, as is now. I mean, everything was available, and it's very hard to stay away from the nightlife,
Very
especially
hard
after
to
you're
say
working
no.
a whole shift.
Yeah, right.
Very hard to say no there to a lot of things. But I had a different. When my parents split up, I sort of took a different approach, and I was very anti throughout my high school years. But I got a gig when I was at 20 years old. I got a road gig that started in Alaska. I was in Alaska on Kodiak Island for 2 months playing. Actually, it was the other way around. The gig started in Kauai, Hawaii. It was a top 40 bar gig in a uh, Chinese restaurant slash nightclub on the island of Kauai called Club Jetty. And we were staying at the home of the owner, which was like this rundown kind of Hawaii plantation house. And it was really cool. No screens on the windows, bugs all over the place. You're sleeping on a mattress on the floor, but we loved it. We were in Hawaii for 2 months playing music. It was amazing. And the other thing that this guy did was he grew and distributed marijuana. And so he introduced me there on Hawaii, which is a pretty good place to get into it. Kauai Electric was the first strain that I ever smoked, and I was
Maui
typical.
Wowie's another good one.
Yeah, Maui Wow is another good one. I still enjoy that. I don't see Kauai Electric out here too much, but
Right,
but
yeah, no,
there on
no.
the island you did, and I was just like most people that the first hit, I was like, I don't feel anything, and then 5 minutes later, you're laughing your head off and having the greatest time you've ever had in your life. That was exactly the experience that I had, and I never looked back from that. I really didn't, and that was a long time ago.
Now, do you say, again, obviously you're using it recreational and having it fun and all that stuff, but do you feel like it helped you in any way, or did it have any medical benefits for you, or in music, or in life, or,
Well, I mean, I'll tell you. I mean, look, creatively, I've always used it as a way to open my mind up and to break down barriers to that whatever that creative force is that is out there. If that tends to come in when you have eliminated all of your own personal barriers to allowing it to come in, because that's what songwriting is all about, really. It's allowing things to come in. It's not that you think of the thing, it's that the things are out there and they somehow penetrate you and you latch onto it, and that's how you go. You're just waiting for, I mean, I guess that's inspiration for me.
yeah.
Cannabis has always been the gateway to inspiration. It's that way for a lot of musicians. It doesn't always work when you're actually trying to make the records. Things as a
Right.
drummer, your time can get a little out of hand, and you can get a little bit lost. Certainly, cutting vocals, it's a little bit different, but for
Trouble with speeds.
songwriting, yeah,
Right, right.
you just lose track of the actual time. The essence of time starts to get distorted, and that's not the greatest thing for a drummer. But in the
Right.
process of in
Good
the
point.
creative process, man, I've never found anything like it, to be honest with you. It's just like a magic key that unlocks a lot of those avenues that you're looking for to connect with that universal energy. I mean, that's what it's here for, I believe. That's my
Very
take.
No,
true.
we absolutely agree, and that's why I was wondering your take on it, because
Yeah,
you saying, and I think it's fair to say again, parents that offer their children alcohol. Now I know that this is going to sound weird, but what I mean is in it, coming from an Italian family, my dad would have a glass of wine and go, "Hey, do you want to try a sip?" Not
right.
saying like take a bottle, but take a sip. You tried the sip. It was no longer forbidden fruit.
Hmm.
It was like, there's alcohol, it's on the table, not a big deal. A lot of friends that I had never had that experience, or I guess the parents didn't want to do that. And they go, oh, we're going to go sneak in and have a drink. I think this is really kind of the same way with you and cannabis. It was always around. You
Yeah.
kind of were okay with it. It wasn't forbidden. Other people might have been talking about it. You're like, maybe it's just not for me at this time. And so I think there is something to be said about that. I'm not saying give your child a bottle of vodka, but I think that,
That can't hurt.
but talking right, but talking about it, or it being around, and then actually using that as a bonding, because a lot of people, instead of sharing a drink now, share a joint,
Yeah.
share a blunt,
I mean,
share a
that's
bowl, whatever.
it's absolutely true for me and my parents. And my dad and I had a rocky road when my folks split up. He and I were not together for a while. There was a lot of resentment and things we had to get over. But this was a way for us to kind of find some common ground in those later years in his life, when I would take him to the pharmacy and we'd pick up some supplies. He'd always like, here's something for you. So we had a lot of a lot of deep conversations around his kitchen table after coming back from the pharmacy with the supplies, and we got through a lot of our issues that way. So it helped, it helped us in that regard as well. So I think there is something to be said about taking uh, that prohibition off of something like this, and finding a way to come together around it. Really, that's something that happened in my family anyway.
Yeah, and again, I think like you said it, or what we were saying is the bonding experience. Instead
Yeah.
of more and more people doing that, and look, anything that you can do to connect uh, with an elderly, or a child, a father and their son, or a daughter and mother, or vice versa, whatever.
Or just your
Um,
neighbors anyway.
or your
Yeah.
neighbors, or your best friends, or whatever. So it's just a nice thing, and sometimes it does invoke thought and conversations that I don't know if
I tell you
alcohol
what, though.
does.
Yeah, I don't know. And there's so many down. I mean, look, I like a drink as much as the next guy, but there are, it is a substance that's basically a poisonous substance that does do a lot of people a lot of damage. Whereas I've never heard any. I mean, they keep trying to tell us that there's all kinds of dangers in cannabis, but I don't know. I mean, for me, I just haven't experienced any of that. Um, but
Well, it
I'm not
leads to, it's a gateway to what do we say all the time? It's a
happiness.
gateway to happiness.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I'm
munchies.
kind of glad,
And munchies.
I will say this, I'm kind of glad that when I was a teenager, when most of my friends were getting into it, I was not. I'm kind of glad that I got into it a little bit later in life, when I was a little bit more developed and I could handle it and
Yeah.
be in control of myself a little bit. But I think that helped me in a certain way, just get a perspective on the whole thing that maybe I wouldn't have had, at 14 or 15. I
Oh, I
was in my
completely agree.
20s, and as an adult, I mean, I think it's important, for me, like I use it in a very methodical and thought out way. I don't overuse anything that I do now. I mean, I like to party, but I don't like to be completely out of control. I can't really afford that in my life. So I have a better grip on it, I think, as an adult than I would have as a kid.
We got to get Phil. We definitely got to get Phil some products, only because I think you'll like
Yeah.
what we've got. We kind of have that middle of the road type of thing. I mean, we just came out with a new gummy for, anti-anxiety and things like that, that are, much more CBD and other cannabinoid focus, CBC and CBG and CBV and a couple other things. But
Well, I mean,
yeah,
that's cool, but I am a high THC guy. But the things that I smoke are high THC products, because I guess I have some tolerance built up. So I do like to, for me to get that mind expansion, I need a good dose of THC and to really get opened up to that. But
Well,
I'm
mixing
interested
that
in those
together,
other things.
meaning
Yeah.
like you'll take a gummy, you can still smoke. You'd be surprised how the cannabinoids interact and give you a much different high. When it happens with that, and they don't do that in a lot of dispensaries where they really are putting that high dose of CBD, but the fact that if you could use them in combination, you'd be surprised the feeling that you would get. A lot of people do coffee and cannabinoids, and they do,
Right.
stimulants and cannabinoids, but and high THC is good. There's fine, on some things, but you'd be surprised. Plus, your tolerance for all these other cannabinoids are very low.
Right,
So when you try something like that along with the smoking, it's going to give you a much different feeling, and you might use
Please
it in
educate
different
me.
ways.
I'm happy.
Yeah,
I'm happy
yeah.
to be educated by you guys.
It's like
Absolutely.
making a little cocktail.
Yeah, it's kind of like making a content. Well, look, our side is the hemp side. Of course, I'm a big fan of cannabis. We have farms and, but yeah, it's all about the cannabinoids and basically how they interact. I mean, there's what's called
Right.
full spectrum, of course, which you have the full entourage effect, which is all the cannabinoids. Then you have isolated cannabinoids when you're talking about CBD or CBG or CBN. And these are the ones that people know about. Again, there's 167 of them or more at this point. So
Right.
I won't go through all of them, but these are the majors. And then you have THC. THC
Yeah.
has a lot of benefits, but there's so many other benefits in like 1-to-1 ratios or 3-to-1 ratios or 10-to-1. And it's dispensaries and people aren't educated on how the other cannabinoids are really the ones that are helping you on a medical level. If we're
Right.
talking about medical things or a neuroprotectant or things into
Right.
that respect.
And then you
You
have
know,
the
my
terpene
partner-
profile on top of that.
Right. And
Right. That's
and
the
then you have
that's
a
the
terpene
flavor
profiles.
profile, right? Isn't that, am I right about
Not-
that?
not
The terpenes
necessarily.
give you the flavor? No?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
okay, that is true, but it's also there's another part of that. That terpene actually gives you the effects when you hear of sativa or an indica. That wording is kind of starting to get outdated. They did it because they wanted people to classify into different things. But if you want to get super technical, it's all L sativa. It's just that terpene profiles give you different feelings of each strain that you smoke. So it's not
gotcha.
just about the taste, but it's actually the effects that it does. But you have to
I see.
understand, marijuana is grown to get you high
Yeah.
in different feelings of a
Right.
high. Hemp is completely different. It's got all
Sure.
the other medicinal factors that'll help you with GI issues, maybe autism, maybe epilepsy, maybe
Right.
ADHD, maybe just any inflammatory effects, and which are much stronger on the hemp side. So
Right.
when you're talking about terpene profiles, it's more like, is that a high terp, or those terps have to do with giving you more of an indica type feeling? Or a sativa feeling? Is it more focused? Like we have a product that is all, we get everything from hemp, but is super focused. We have a lot of professional athletes that use it. When you go outside, a lot of, believe it or not, musicians that they want to be focused, still
Yeah.
feel good, but they want that timing. Exactly what you
Yeah.
just described of not being able to have that with high THC, where you can have that with another type of product, but still have a body high.
Wow, that's fascinating.
So,
my
yeah.
partner is heavily into the CBD stuff. I mean, he uses edibles at night to relax and go to sleep. And I mean, he's
he needs pure
really
sleep.
heavily into it.
I was gonna say he needs that award winning.
Yeah, I mean, he's really into it. He's really into it.
Yeah, we actually created a award-winning product called Pure Sleep, and it's got 11 different things in it along with cannabinoids. It's made specifically for sleep, but putting you into REM. So, and that's what we do. We basically take these other products and we mix them with, a molecule that will help in different ways, which is completely different than what we're doing in anything else. So, or anybody else is doing it. They're either just doing hemp, CBD, or they're doing cannabinoids. So, so obviously you talked a little bit about Joey, and
Yep.
former, also fellow 7Horse member, but
Yep.
and you were in that band Dada, so we were talking about that.
That's correct.
And
Yeah.
but you opened for some pretty big acts. I mean, you had Sting, Kenny Wayne Shepherd.
Yeah.
Talk to us about some of the people you have gotten to open up for, or you've got to rub shoulders with. and share any stories or blunts with, or anything in your time out in your career.
Well, I'll tell you. I mean, the first big tour that we did in Dada in 1993, we had a record that came. Our debut album came out in 1993. It had a song called "I'm Going to Disneyland" on it, which was a
Nice.
pretty substantial hit. Our record company president was Miles Copeland at IRS Records. He was also Sting's manager. Boom, we're out on a world tour with Sting, playing big theaters like 6,000 to 25,000 seaters.
Shit.
It was an
Yeah.
incredible experience for a young band just getting started, coming out of 300 cap nightclubs to then suddenly be on stage in front of 25,000 people. It's you grow up in a hurry in that situation. Watching him, I mean, there's a lot of controversial things about Sting. People think he's super cool. Some people think he's a stuck-up, prick, whatever. He was nothing but cool to us. I'll never forget the first day we met. It was at the Berkeley Greek Theater, Berkeley, California, an outdoor venue. That was our first show with him. Probably, I don't know, between 5,000 and 10,000 seats. They had backstage tents set up for our dressing room is essentially a tent. We were in there getting ready. We're all nervous. We're this young band just getting started. We're kind of giddy. We're about to go on in front of his audience. And all of a sudden the curtain opens and there he is. We had not met him before. He's, this was in the heavy yoga tantra days that, remember when Sting was talking about how
Of
long he
course.
could have sex and all that. But he was doing yoga on tour every day. And he entered our tent wearing nothing but the smallest tighty whities you could imagine. So basically he's naked, comes in, hello guys. And we're all like, but he was super cool to us.
They're looking like Steve-O.
I mean, it was like, yeah, there he is. There's Sting. He looked incredible. We went out there and kicked ass on that tour nightly and won a lot of fans over. And it was a great experience to watch him at the level he was at, the level of professionalism. It really taught me a lesson about what it takes to do this on a daily basis. You don't really understand what it takes to put on these kind of shows until you're backstage watching somebody go about their business. It's like watching professional athletes,
Right.
from behind the lines. When you see what they go through to get ready, when you see the kind of preparation and the work ethic that it takes for the entire organization to put this kind of a show on, it's a great lesson for a young band if you're willing to learn it. I ran into one time in a recording studio, talking about other people and sharing experiences with. I'm in a recording studio in the early 2000s in San Francisco working on a mix, and I looked down in the other room, and there's Neil Young sitting there. He's recording with Crazy Horse. So I was like, wow, that's amazing. And he comes out at one point, and I was holding at the time, because we were just in the studio mixing. So during that time, I do like to get high and just listen as the engineer's working. And so I just thought, well, what the hell? And I just like, hey, Neil, you want to smoke a joint? And he was like, yeah. So we went into the studio with him and Crazy Horse. And I basically ended his session because he got high. And at that point, he was like, I'm out of here. Got into his convertible Cadillac and drove away. But he was super cool to me as well. I was on a session in LA in the late 90s. A friend of mine was an engineer that we had worked with in the Dada days. He called one day and said, listen, we're doing a session at the Village, which is a venerable LA recording studio that like Fleetwood Mac made Rumors in, and all kinds of great records. Steely Dan made a lot of records there. We ended up making a record there after this experience. But he said, listen, I'm working with Ringo Starr. Come on down. We're doing a group vocal on a Ringo song, and you guys can be on this. And so, I was a gigantic, and still am. I love the Beatles. And really, Ringo was the reason I'm a drummer. Yeah. Well, I mean, some people, and especially back then, I mean, there was a kind of a Beatles backlash going on.
I mean, right. It's kind of like Michael Jackson, Elvis, Beatles. I don't know. I mean, they're pretty high. They're pretty high up there.
And the Beatles for me were everything when I was a kid, and it really was like the refuge. Their music was a refuge for me from the chaos in my house. I'd put on headphones and play along to, come together or whatever. That's kind of how I learned how to play songs, is from Ringo. So anyway, it's a Ringo record. He's doing this record, and they're going to have like 30 people in the studio to do this kind of like Hey Jude-esque chorus where everybody's singing. It's a song called La Di Da from his record Vertical Man. So we go down there, and it was all three of the guys in Dada were on this session. And so we were warned, though, coming in, like, look, no cameras, okay? That's the one thing, you cannot bring a camera. We're like, all right, we won't bring a camera. So we go down there. We had I'd recently dyed my hair when I had it. It was flaming red orange, right?
Oh, wow.
We have the other guy in the band was blonde, and Joey has very dark hair. So we had this, like, we were really looking like a band when we showed up. Now on this session was the late Scott Weiland was there. Nils Lofgren was on it. It was a cavalcade of stars. Van Dyke Parks, who worked with the Beach Boys, wrote lyrics for Brian Wilson. He was on it. And then also a bunch of friends of Ringo, his lawyer, his doctor, his neighbor, I don't know, a bunch of people. But there's 30 of us there. The producer is a guy named Mark Hudson, who worked with Aerosmith and Ozzy Osbourne, and used to be, if anybody goes back to the 70s, was a member of
These are all
Hudson
legends.
brothers. Yeah, it was a room full of legends and us. So the way we're in a big room. They've got 30 people assembled. So Mark Hudson, the producer, says, okay, first thing we're going to do is we'll have all the singers, the professional singers, up front and everybody else in the back. And now at the time, I'm the lead singer in 7Horse, but at the time I was just playing drums in Dada, so I didn't think of myself that way. So I went to the back. And we did a pass of this vocal, and we're just singing la la di da, whatever the words were. And we finish up, and he goes, okay, now let's mix it up. Let's switch it up. Let's get the non-singers up front. And I hear Ringo go, well, I'm going to go up front. Ha, ha, ha. And so I go up front, and we come around different sides, and I find myself standing directly next to Ringo Starr.
Wow.
We're side by side. And I'm not a big guy. I'm like 5'7". Ringo's coming up to about here on me. He's a real small guy.
He's like Tom Cruise.
He's a little guy.
Yeah.
I think in the old Beatle days, he wore very high boots. But I'm standing there, and I realize that, like, this is my chance. This is my one chance in life, probably, to converse with Ringo. Right. So I just laid it out there. I was like, listen, man, I love you. The Beatles, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't, drum. He goes, oh, what do you do? I said, well, I'm a drummer. Oh, another drummer. Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm going off, Well, first we sang the track down, and then I turned to him, and that was the end of the session. And then I turned to him, and I laid all this out for him. And I was just like, and he's like, yeah, take it easy. It's all right, And he was super cool, though, very gracious. And I was just laying it all out for him.
And you do a good Ringo.
My guts.
You do a good Ringo.
Yeah, well, I've been listening to him for a long time. So I laid all this out, right? And then everybody brought a camera out. Everybody had a camera except us. And we're like, well, somebody get a picture of this.
Right.
So I have this photo of the three of us, or the four of us, myself, Joey, our other bandmate, Mike, and me, with my arm around Ringo. Somebody was gracious enough to take this photo. Now, seconds later, I look into the control room, right? I look in the control room of the studio, and there's his wife, Barbara Bach, sitting in there, the actress, and at that time, just beautiful actress, Barbara Bach, is sitting inside the control room. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself right now. So I figure, well, if I just met Ringo, I'm going to go meet his wife. So I march into the control room, and I say, hello. I introduce myself, and I say, listen, I just spewed it out all over your husband. I hope he didn't, freak out or anything. And she's like, oh no, he loves to hear from guys like you who were inspired by him. And let me tell you a secret. When Bono came to the house, he did the exact same thing, so don't feel bad. And so, that expression that people have, walking on air, you've heard that expression before. I never really knew what that meant, but my bandmates and I went out for a beer at a British pub after that recording session, and we were just sitting around this table. We could not believe what had just happened, and I literally felt like my feet were not attached to the earth anymore, because it was just It's the most incredible moment of my life after thinking about it's amazing how the universe can work for you in these ways. I mean, I thought about Ringo Starr and the Beatles almost every day of my life for 30 years, or I don't know how old I was
Right.
at the time, 20, 29 years, whatever it was. And there he was. Somehow that energy brought us together that close. And, then we went our separate ways. I've never seen him again in person, obviously, but just to get that
Right.
opportunity to exchange that with him was magic, man. It was absolute magic.
You see, this is why we ask these stories.
Outstanding.
I mean, how would we have known any of this? This is why you have to ask. Amazing story. Are you kidding me? This. I mean, I couldn't imagine, and that, to feel that, but maybe one day.
You never know. I mean, there may be the person that, I don't know who that person is for you guys, but I truly believe, like, if that's in your mind enough, there's some way, some connection throughout the universe that brings these things together. I mean, I've had other experiences like that. I'm a huge baseball fan and baseball player in high school, and later in my adult years, I played some tournament baseball, as and over 35 World Series and that kind of stuff. And I've
Nice.
been around some. I've been around some pro athletes at clinics and camps, and and just having these experiences to get this close kind of contact with people that you really idolize or look up to. It's real magical when it does happen. It doesn't happen all
I'm,
the time. So I always keep that in mind. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I
no,
always
no.
keep that in mind when I meet. We've had fans of our music for 30 years, from Dada through 7Horse, and every time I meet one of them, I remember how I don't certainly put myself in the category of Ringo Starr or any of these super famous people, but I do have fans that have been listening to our music for a long time.
Of course.
And it always brings me back to that moment. It's like, this is a big deal for that person. Even if for you, it's like, who am I? What is it? They don't really know me or whatever, but I know what's going on the other side. I've never forgotten that. And I think it's served me pretty well in those moments.
I think just in general, if people always have to realize that their fans and the people that are supporting them are the ones that matter the most. I mean,
Absolutely
that's
true.
what makes people. The same thing with Hempire, the same thing with anything. I mean, if it wasn't for you guys listening and wanting to hear what we ask and what we talk about, and we're so thankful. But I guess what I was going to say is, people, they're still people at the end of the day. And I think some people forget that. They're like, well, they're superstars, they're this, but they're still people. And
So
and
true.
they go through the same trials and tribulations as us. They love, and I think that they just, like you were saying, or his wife was saying, he's going after Bono, saying the same thing. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
it's whoever that person is, there's always someone bigger, or there's always somebody different,
Well, no,
or,
in
you
that
know,
case, though, it was Bono did it to him.
right.
Bono
Oh,
came
but right.
and did
Bono
what
did it
I
to him
did
as
to him.
well. Right.
Yeah, Bono
That's what I
Bono
was,
was,
yeah,
who was like one of the biggest rock stars on the planet at the
exactly.
time.
That's what
He was like, Gringo, I love you. He was like that for him. He was
He
saying
was
that to me, like,
fanboying
don't
out.
worry about
right. It totally
Totally
fanboying
fanboying.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, and there was one other thing. I know that we were talking about it. You were walking. It's kind of funny because I saw it. Blue Man Group. How was
Oh
that?
yeah.
Then you said you worked with Blue Man Group.
Yeah, in 2000, if you want to hear a little bit about what it's like to have a major label record deal, the last record deal that Dada had was with MCA Records in the late 90s, and by 1999, we were dropped from we made a big, very expensive record in 1998 with big name producer and all kinds of fanfare, and by 1999, we were dropped from the label. I was bankrupt and divorced, lost my apartment in Malibu, and my life was completely cratered from this experience of being signed to this major label. So, I mean, I was basically working a delivery job with a shirt that like said speedy delivery, delivering packages, when one day I opened up the LA Weekly. I mean, I was really depressed too. It's like, I don't know what I'm going to do, because I didn't really have no job skills other than playing music and being an entertainer.
Right.
So I opened the LA Weekly, and there was an ad there, open call for Blue Man Group. And I'd kind of heard about Blue Man Group at the time, but I didn't know that much about it. And I just sent them, I applied, and they said, yeah, okay, you can audition. And so auditioned for the show, and the next thing I know, I was in New York on the call back. And the next thing that I knew after that, I actually got the gig back in Las Vegas, which was my hometown. So in 2000, I moved back to Las Vegas from LA and worked at the Luxor with Blue Man Group for the next 3 years. And it was an incredible time there to be involved in a show just getting on its feet in Vegas with an amazing group of musicians from all over the country that they had, and they weren't looking for like theater kind of guys. They were looking for rock and roll guys that would work in the theater. So the theater experience is really unique. This sort of instant family. It's like a sports team. It's like everybody falls in love with everybody right away because you've got this common goal to put this show up. And it hit me. It was a perfect time for me because I really needed someplace to call home. And these guys helped me get back on my feet. And the relationships, I still have friends that are still in the show, if you can believe it, that have been there for over 20 years. I couldn't do it for that long because I had ambitions to make my own music. And I couldn't, the repetition of doing the same show every day, day after day, 7 times a week, whatever it was. I got burned out on it after a few years, but it was an amazing job, especially at that time. I mean, we had Las Vegas wired, because we would get off at 12:30 from the late show, and then we'd go out, and we'd be out until 6, 7 in the morning because you didn't have to be at work until 5 in the afternoon. So
right.
I was living my dad's life from 25 years ago, where you're working the night shift and you're partying all at 4 or 5 in the morning, and you're just trying to get back to your apartment before the sun comes up. That was I could not face the dawn. I would have to get back. I was like, I gotta go. It's time for me.
No, and especially I'm sure all that blue paint had been melted by then, so you guys were probably just looking at a mess. So
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
it was an incredible job.
I mean, and you know what? You got definitely some incredible stories there, Phil. So you've done some impressive things, and we want to see what the hell you got going on here next. So if you wouldn't mind, tell everybody what you have going and where they can follow you and find you.
All right. Well, we're getting ready to release our 5th album as 7Horse. It's called The Last Resort. The album comes out on October the 28th. We're actually, I don't know when this is going to air, but our 3rd single from the album is dropping on Friday, September the 30th. And then the full album comes out October the 28th, 7Horse, The Last Resort. We're doing an album release show here in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, at the Roxy Theater. It's a legendary venue in Hollywood, which we have gone out on a limb and bought out the place. Basically, we're not working. We're promoting the show ourselves, producing it ourselves. So we rented out the Roxy for the night.
Nice.
We're bringing a much bigger production inside this 500 cap room, with video and a lot of other surprises to try to make this a real event for us and our fans at the Roxy, which the show's on sale now, and it will take place on November the 4th. So the album on October. Is that your birthday?
Yeah,
perfect. We'll be celebrating. Celebrating Nick's birthday there that night
awesome.
as well. I hope you can make it. So we've got the album coming out. We got the show coming up. Everybody can reach us at our website, 7horsemusic.com. It's the number 7 and the word horse all together. 7Horse. And of course, we're on every social media platform: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, if you can believe it.
Nice.
YouTube, our videos are up on YouTube. I tweet. We're everywhere. We're trying to reach as many people as we possibly can. So you can find us at anywhere, any of those platforms. We're up everywhere. And at our website, 7horsemusic.com.
Excellent, Phil. Excellent. I do appreciate all your time. And for all of our followers, go ahead and please like, subscribe, share the podcast, tell your friends about it, tell them to get educated. And you can find us on any of your platforms like Spotify, Apple, Amazon, anything where you listen to. So we do appreciate your time, Phil, and everybody else. Remember, until next time, stay out there, stay educated.